welcome to the Healing for the Heart podcast. People just like us, we're really glad that you're able to join us today, wherever you're joining us from, and whatever device you're watching this on. We're really glad that you're here. If you're listening on one of the platforms, then we'd love that if you could like that, or if you could share that with the folks in your social media circle, so that we can actually get this podcast out and reach a lot more people than we do at the minute. So we are very glad that you're here. We're glad to be here. I'm certainly really glad to be here today. And today I'm delighted. I have got Lorna with me. Lorna's going to introduce herself in just a second. Lorna and I go back quite some time, but we actually haven't seen each other for quite some time either. So we've been catching up for the last wee while. So hopefully we're not all talked out, and we're and we're actually going to be able to do this and really make it sound as if we know what we're talking about.
Well, that would be the hardest part.
That would be good, wouldn't it? So,
but
Lorna,
I don't think you or I will ever be talked out.
Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a wee bit about yourself?
Okay, my name's Lorna. I'm Lorna Farrell. I'm 21. No, I'm not. And Sean and I think, met about 25 years ago now. I'm a former sports journalist and broadcaster. I worked in radio and television. Then I worked in, business development work. And then about 10, 12 years ago, I had the first of a series of operations which left me disabled. So I use a wheelchair or a walker to get about. My life took a huge 180-degree turn. I went from knowing exactly where I was going with my career, had my life plan, and everything went out the window. Lost my income, lost my house, lost my health. And so I've been on this journey for the past 10, 12 years now. And I would love to say that it's been all roses. It hasn't. It's been a really tough journey. But I have learned and grown so much more in the past 10, 12 years than I did for the first years before.
Yeah. It's really interesting, that, isn't it, in terms of all that adversity and how and what adversity does for you.
Well, I think you don't realise the sort of strength that we all have as human beings. Because I would have said, you knew me before I was disabled. I was a very annoying person who never stood still. I would be cartwheeling. I went to hospital one night at the end of an Old Firm game. So the emergency room was mobbed. And I went in and I had broken my wrist and all my fingers. And so there was a lot of people there who had been fighting after the footballs. There was all sorts of injuries. And the nurse said to me, well, what happened to you? Were you in a fight? And I was like, no, I was doing a cartwheel. And she said, doing a cartwheel? And I said, yes. And she said, oh, did your team win and score a goal? I said, no, I was in church round the corner and I did a cartwheel. And she was like, okay, right. And so I was that kind of annoying person. I never stood still. I was very sporty. As a sports journalist, I love sports, and I've never been that good, but I played a few sports and I loved walking, running, that sort of thing. Well, not running, actually. I never liked that, unless there was a point to it, like playing badminton or tennis. I loved doing that. So I would have said at that point, if anybody had said to me that I would end up using a wheelchair, that I couldn't cope with that. And I would genuinely have believed that I wouldn't be strong enough because my life was so active and because I was always mobile. So that would actually have been on my list of top 10 fears or things that I didn't think I could handle. So that's what I mean about you really don't know how resilient you are until you're in adversity.
Yeah.
I wish there was a nicer way to know, but it is when you hit the depths and you hit rock bottom that you actually realise that as human beings, we are a lot stronger. And I think the thing that annoys me is that it's seen as a sign of weakness if you struggle with your mental health in the middle of adversity, whereas that's our coping mechanism.
Yeah.
It's no wonder if you're living with constant pain, or if you're going through the trauma of a divorce, or if you're grieving, or whatever you find yourself in. Your world has become abnormal. Your
Yep.
world isn't
Yep.
the world as you knew it. So it's no wonder that our mental health gets impacted in the middle of it. And one group that I went to, it was actually to do stand-up comedy, which used to be my opening line. You paid for stand-up and you got me because I'd be wheeling on in my wheelchair. But I did this course with people who have long-term either physical disabilities or mental health issues. And so we were a whole collection of people with varying backgrounds, and we wanted to give stand-up comedy a shot. And it was listening to all these other people's stories as well that you think, wow, you're incredibly strong. You're not incredibly weak. Yeah. It's what you've walked through or rolled through or wheeled through or crawled through is something that could have broken you but hasn't. And yes, you maybe need a little bit of healing. You need a bit more TLC. You need to, I think my biggest struggle was being kind to myself. And I've always struggled with that. And sometimes I think that's a West of Scotland thing. Yeah. And, our culture and just even the way we speak over ourselves. And I still do it. But learning to actually cut myself some slack has been a big journey for me.
Yep. So that whole journey that you've been on then, obviously you went from not having a disability to having a disability. Was that a gradual thing or was that an overnight thing? What did that look like?
It started off as a simple operation that I had to have for a woman's problem, which was a mesh implant. I learned to do that. That's, for some reason we don't talk about these things. But so I had a mesh implant, and for the first couple of years it was okay, but then I started to get horrendous pain. The horrendous pain then became literally being ripped internally, and it felt like barbed wire. And so that got worse and worse, and it was a whole big fight to actually even be acknowledged that this was happening. Then it was decided, I had another couple more operations, then it was decided to try and remove the mesh implant, and that at that point, the mesh implant had perforated my bladder. Then, during this operation, my obturator nerve was cut, so I was left with permanent nerve damage. So when I came round, I knew that something was really, really wrong, not just with the mesh, but the damage from this third operation or whatever had left me, I really couldn't walk very far at all. So I needed to have a wheelchair, and I refused to have it at first. And then that was more restrictive than having a wheelchair because I couldn't go anywhere. And so I got a wheelchair, and it's a very obvious symbol of being, and it's the international symbol for disability is the wheelchair. And so I hated it. And I didn't want it, and I didn't want to be disabled, because all of the things that came with it for me were just loss. I lost my job because I was physically unable to go and work because I'm left with nerve damage and constant chronic pain. So I lost my job, lost my income, lost everything, and I lost a lot of my identity, which it threw me. I didn't realize how much I had put in being a businesswoman, having my own funds, my own savings, to go to having nothing, to living on benefits, which I hate. And then to top all that off, I can't do the things that I like to do. And now I'm sat here in a wheelchair, which I hated. And so all I could see was loss. And then you have to deal with, and I don't think people are necessarily bad. And I shudder to think, was I ever like this? But there actually are people who don't look at you in a wheelchair, who, we've spoken about this, and you experienced that in the airport, where people just either talk to the person who's pushing you, or no eye contact, or you do get the, side head, do you like sugar in your tea? And I honestly didn't know that existed, but I literally have had, oh, you're coming in, come on, would you like a wee cup of tea? And I thought the person was joking, and so was just mimicking them back, going, yes, I'm coming in. And then it's like, oh, you actually think because I'm in a wheelchair that, I have other disabilities. So that was a big learning curve for me.
And that's a big shift, and it's almost a big shift in identity, isn't it? Because it's like, so you know who you are, and then that shifts. But not only does that shift, but everybody else's opinion about who you are shifts as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you don't think about, because I forget I'm disabled now, which is I'm happy that I'm in this place, because I don't want it to be at the forefront of everything. But in the beginning it was, and people, even in conversations, would, and you know, not just strangers, and not ever nastily, but exclude you from something just without even asking you. Do you know what I mean? Like, blah, 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 we'll do this. Oh, Lorna, you can't come because, you know, you're disabled. So never mind, you know, you can maybe meet us for it. And it's kind of like, whoa, you know, I might want to come. I might not be able to climb the Monroe, but, you know, I might want to come with you and wheel about the bottom bit and meet you for a coffee after or something. And also being physically excluded from places, like going out with the crowd for dinner and then not being able to get into the restaurant because I can't get my wheelchair in. And then I used to feel guilty because nobody else is going to go in. So we've all got to change our plans. And it's just things like that at the beginning made me think that being disabled was my identity.
Yeah.
And so that's why I did the stand-up comedy course. And it was because I felt as if my voice had been silenced. And some of that's not just other people, that was me as well, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't recognize this person that couldn't cartwheel and break her fingers, that couldn't just say, yeah, you know, let's go for a game of badminton, or didn't have money either. I mean, that was a big thing.
So what were some of the things, because you tied a wee minute ago, you were tying in the whole idea of the impact that something like that also has on your mental health and on your well-being. So what, I don't know if you can remember back, what were some of the things that you actually had to work through with that? And you might not want to talk about that, but
No, I don't mind. Well, I definitely had bouts of depression that I think we're connected with the loss of things, of income, as I say, of my business, but also there was a real anxiety about just my world being smaller, and yet I still didn't feel in control. So there's sort of limitations and restrictions on what I can do, where I can go, but there's also, I can't really control. Physically, I couldn't control. Sometimes I fall, so that there's that. I can't actually control my body either the way I used to. But also, I don't sometimes, because I have a Christian faith. So what has always been my bedrock and my go-to is to pray, or to read the Bible, or to sing one of my songs. And I even couldn't get into that space, because I was just struggling so much with, I don't know who I am. Yeah. And not in a, navel gazing. Who am
but I suppose that's I don't know who I am. And so all of these things that I did before, because I understood how all of this fitted together, all of a sudden it doesn't fit together anymore, does it? The paradigm shifts almost, and you've got to work out how the pieces all go together again.
Yeah. And I think that's it. It's the pieces of you. So you don't actually, I guess, have I changed? Yes, in the past 10, 12 years. But I think we all grow and we all change. But I wouldn't trade the sort of resilience and things that I've picked up along the way. I used to think I was quite a compassionate person. Now I know I have more compassion. I know that I know what it's like to feel like you don't have a voice, or that you don't matter, or you're less than. And so I feel like I have a lot more compassion. I mean, this happened not just to me. This is a worldwide issue, the mesh implant thing. And so coming together with a bunch of women that it happened to in Scotland, and the relief in knowing that you're not the only person, hearing other people's stories gives a sort of credence to your own as well, and realizing, you know, you're not going crazy. This really is horrific. This is, and then fighting against it, and, you know, being part of a campaign to get this operation banned in Scotland, to highlight the dangers, has been an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Because we were finding our voice.
And I suppose it also starts to address some of the stigma that's round about it as well, doesn't it? And it breaks taboos.
Yes. And I think it's, I mean, and I'm old, I'm late 50s. And so I see a great shift in how people respond to the voice of women. And there's definitely been shifts in the past 20 years and strides made forward, but still, to talk about an issue that's a woman's issue, you know, to mention the word vaginal implant, that's 2 words, is still, it's embarrassing. People feel uncomfortable, and, you know, but this is why also I think the pharmaceutical companies were getting away with this, is because nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to. So that has been a really big, that helped me a lot to actually feel like, because I hate injustice. And so I feel like the injustice of this, speaking out about it, actually helped me to get that piece back in the right place. Because before this happened, you know, I joined the ANC. I marched for Mandela to be released. I've protested again. I actually protested against, you know, female genitalia mutilation, which is in essence what happened to me. You know, getting back that part of me was really helpful to be like, no, I'm somebody who hates injustice, and I want to see a shift. And also, like giant pharmaceutical companies, the power that they wield to be able to take them on and say, no, you can't just do that. You can't, you know, you were warned that this wasn't fit to be put in human beings, and you still did it, and that's not okay. So that part of the journey's actually been great for me. But then you've also got to watch that doesn't become your identity. That, you know, because you can find positive things in being disabled. Let's face it, we have the best parking spaces and the bigger toilets. The finding positives is what helps me, but I don't want to stay in that place either of just being, you know, I need to also get the piece. See, you're very good at this. The pieces of me that are about creativity. And, you know, so that I'm not just somebody.
So, but it is that whole thing, isn't it, of the fact that we're multifaceted. It's like that diamond thing that, you know, you can look at it from all sorts of different places and see different colours and different light and all the rest of it. And so often we get hooked onto or bogged down by the thing that makes us different from everybody else, or by the thing that's less than everybody else, or sometimes by the thing that's more than everybody else. But we almost like we channel ourselves into this very narrow channel of this is who I am. But in actual fact, there's so much colour and so much light and so many pieces that are there that are all really, really good. And
we need to acknowledge and, for lack of a better phrase, move in all of them as well. One of my favourite things when I was wee was a kaleidoscope. Remember, you know, like just every time you turn it, there's something new. There's new coloured shapes, or, you know, wee floaty bits. Like, and I think our lives are more like that than a straight linear black and white. Well, that would be so dull anyway. I want to be a kaleidoscope. I don't want to be a straight line for me to be. And I think it's also allowing other people to find their voice. One of the most rewarding things I have done in my life is, if you Martina Navratilova, but no, is I used to teach a sort of storytelling, creative writing session at City Mission in Glasgow and all the guests are in varying stages of homelessness or getting, and just encouraging people that some people would walk past and not give the time of day, listening to their stories, the stories of how they got there, the stories of their dreams and aspirations, their poems. Honestly, it was just like seeing people's faces come alive and light up when they're talking about something good in their childhood or what,
Yeah.
you know, and we all have these stories, and we all need to be able to express who we are. And I'm not really, you know, I don't have all the sort of correct lingo, and, you know, I'll probably be saying all the wrong words, but I just think love people. Like, it sounds really twee, but there's not enough love in the world. But it is that, be more patient, be more understanding.
Yeah.
And if somebody is in a wheelchair, guess what? It's gonna take them a bit longer to get in through the door. You know, deal with it.
That's right.
If somebody is nervous about something that you know, it does not bother me at all meeting new people. I love that. But for some people, that's a massive thing.
Yeah.
Be kind, be understanding, wonder why. That's a big thing, not like, do you know?
And that wonder and curiosity thing is something that is really, really important, isn't it? I think what you were talking about there in terms of how you define yourself, if you like, we've been thinking about that here with our Compassionate Conversations group. So these are groups that support folks who are bereaved through suicide, alcohol or drugs, which is a very different kind of bereavement. Can often be much more complicated. And one of the things that that Donna's been working on here is talking about, well, what was life like before the pain? Because you can get fixated on this one thing. So you can get, as you say, you can become defined by your disability. You can become defined by what's happened to you. You can become defined by what somebody did or whatever. But in actual fact, it's pulling back again to that whole kaleidoscope thing, isn't it? That we're much more than our illness or our mental health or what's happened to us or our job or our lack of job or whatever. We're much more than all of that.
Yeah. And I think a great lesson I've learned on this journey is, even if I had all of those pieces in the, you know, the little square picture that I might have made before, I don't actually want that anymore. Great if you have your best job, your best house, your best relationship, your best bank account, but it's who you are even in the middle of that. It's not adversity hasn't shaped me, if you know what I mean. It's just kind of unlocked who I really am. And there's parts of this as well that I don't like of me. It's not like I've gone, dunno, and all of my responses I'm proud of. They're not. There's times where I've just been a huffy, petulant, why me, this is awful, nobody understands, and that's okay. But I don't want to stay there, and I don't want to give myself permission to be somebody I don't like. Do you know what I mean? Just because I'm disabled or just because I'm having a bad day. And it is that when you sit and listen to somebody's story, even for 2 seconds, on a bus, at the train station, in the supermarket, we're all going through stuff. We've all got disappointments. We've all got pain. Yeah,
we used to say we're all in recovery from something.
Yeah. And so be the person you would want to have next to you, to that person, family, stranger, friend, whatever, because life is a journey and it's not easy. And like I said, I'm a Christian, so my faith is what gets me through it, but it also encourages me to reach out to people, and I would say that this adversity and becoming disabled has helped me to be a lot more, well, you need to ask my family if I'm a lot more loving, but certainly I want to be a lot more compassionate and kind. Kindness is not much talked about, but it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've covered so much ground in there, and we were concerned that we weren't going to have enough to talk about. We always land on the same question with everybody that comes onto the podcast, And to be fair, if anybody, for anybody watching or listening, I did spring this question on you about 3/4 of an hour ago, because clearly didn't send you the email that had the question on it. And so the question that we always land on is, if there was one thing about our culture or society, and you might actually have answered it already, but if there was one thing about our culture or society that you could change, if you had some fairy dust to sprinkle or a magic wand to wave, then what would it be that would impact mental health positively? Inclusivity. I think that's the to include people in your life, in your space, in the present. And that might look like, you know, physically putting a ramp up. It might look like having better lighting for people who are visually impaired. But I think for me, it's more about being so present that the person that's next to you, you are including them in your life, and they're hopefully including you by being kind, by listening, by being compassionate, by sharing, by actually caring. Just, there's so much in all of our heads. There's so many voices, and it's got even louder with social media and things like that, that I think inclusivity for me means having other people's stories in my head, other people's concerns, other people's. So when I say inclusivity, that's what I mean, including other people into the narrative of my life, and hopefully being in other people's in a positive way.
Yeah.
Not draining.
That's fabulous. I'm going to spring one more question on you. I know, but I'm going to spring one more question on you, because I know that there are people who watch and listen to this who are going through really tough stuff, who are through no fault of their own find themselves in a place where life has changed dramatically for them, and actually they are struggling with all of those things that you've talked about in the conversation this afternoon. If you could say something to them just now, what would you want to say to them?
Don't give up. Don't give up believing that it can get better. And whether that's, for me, as I keep saying, that's a faith thing. For you, it might be creativity, it might be art, it might be sport, it might be laughing, it might be chocolate. It's actually faith and chocolate for me. But don't give up believing and hoping that even in the next minute, it might get a bit better. Because it's not realistic to expect somebody who's in the pits of despair to hold on for next week. And so, but just to have hope that it can get better, it will get better, and to focus on, for me, it's about focusing on positive things, even in the midst of, like, sometimes my pain is so bad, I can't do anything, I'm just lying on the couch. But if I start to be thankful that my duvet is really soft, and it's really warm, and that actually there's nowhere else in the world I need to be but that place with that warm duvet, then that helps me. And before I know it, 3-4 minutes have passed. And do you know what I mean? So just have hope. Be grateful for little things that you don't even think are important. But the more little things that you are grateful for, that you recognize are positive, then before you know it, you're through 5 minutes that you didn't think you could get through.
And I suppose that goes hand in glove with the answer to the previous question, the inclusivity stuff, because actually if I'm in that place and I'm doing that for myself, but other people are coming alongside me and they're actually walking with me and interested in including me, then you've got a double whammy there, haven't you, where actually things could move forward, and the hope actually begins to be something that's tangible and not something that's just almost pie in the sky that's out there
for other people.
Thank you so much. That was a fabulous conversation. I could actually just sit here and blather for the rest of the afternoon, but we do try to keep the podcast a certain length. So thank you so much for joining us, and maybe you'll come back and we'll do another one about something else.
I would love to.
Fabulous. If you have enjoyed this, then please do like wherever it is that you're watching this, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening on one of our podcast streaming platforms. Please do like it. It really does help to get the word out to other people. If you have followed us through a link on social media, please share it on your social media, because again, it helps us to push this out. This conversation has been a really important one, and I'm sure it's important for a number of people who are out there. So please make sure that you can help us to spread the word. If you have liked what you've heard, are you thinking that I could do that, I could go where Lorna is this afternoon, then please get in touch with us, because we would love to have you on our podcast talking about what it is that matters to you. We're just people just like us.